So today we'll be continuing our discussion about NSAIDs. Yesterday I told you all the drugs that are coming under the classification of NSAIDs. All of them will work by the same way. I'll go over some of the important drugs. Okay, mechanism of action will remain the same. It is just that PK and PD factors will differ a little bit, and they have certain advantages over each other. Okay, one will be preferable in certain conditions while the other in certain conditions. Okay, first one that we'll come to is diclofenac. Now, diclofenac is a very potent anti-inflammatory drug, especially for arthritis. All right. One reason of giving diclofenac is this fellow is somewhat COX-2 selective. Okay. If you remember in NSAIDs, we were discussing that we would ideally only want to inhibit COX-2 rather than inhibiting COX-1, because COX-1 is responsible for what you call formation of prostaglandins, and it is responsible for TXA2 production, thromboxane A2 production, which in turn plays a role in clotting. Are we recording? Yeah. So as I was telling, diclofenac is somewhat selective to COX-2. Okay, so it is slightly advantageous. It is not that it will not inhibit COX-1, but it will preferentially do more of inhibition where it is affecting COX-2. COX-2 selective. All right, I'll just put it here. Right. Another thing about COX-2 is the reason why it is preferred to be given in osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis and bursitis is that it has very good tissue penetrability. It will penetrate in tissue very, very well, especially in synovial fluid. Okay, this fellow will achieve almost 3 times the concentration, or it will stay in synovial fluid 3 times longer than it does in plasma. So if I give diclofenac the drug, okay, orally, the concentration it achieves in blood, let's suppose that is 1 mg per deciliter, okay, or 2 mg per deciliter, whatever the concentration is. uh, the duration for which it remains in blood, let's suppose that is x. Okay, if I compare that with the duration it stays in synovial fluid, that will be 3x, meaning it will stay in your synovial fluid 3 times longer than it does in your blood, meaning it has 3 times more effectiveness in your synovial fluid than your blood. All right, that is why it has very good tissue penetrability, and it is preferred as anti-inflammatory drug. uh, Very good tissue penetrability, especially in synovial fluid. All right, because of this particular reason, second, uh, it stays in almost a vertical 3 times longer in your synovial fluid than it does in plasma, because of which the uses of this vertical diclofenac include rheumatoid arthritis. I'll just abbreviate it as RA. Okay, that is rheumatoid arthritis. It is used in osteoarthritis. It is used in bursitis. Bursa is a small fluid-filled sac that is present in your big joints. Okay, it will be present in your shoulder. It will be present in your hip joint. Sometimes in some people there will be a condition where bursa gets rubbed in the wrong way. Literally, it gets how should I put it? Sometimes what happens is some people will have inflammation in their shoulder because they have moved in a very weird way, especially athletes and all. They have rubbed their joints in the wrong way, because of which bursitis has occurred because of some injury there. Right, to treat bursitis, not treat, to manage bursitis, this fellow is given. And for toothache, it can also be given for dysmenorrhea, pain due to dysmenorrhea. All right. Now you get diclofenac as Voveran. Voveran is very, very common drug that you will see in hospitals. Common adverse effects that you see with this drug is epigastric pain. Because it is somewhat selective to COX-2, it still inhibits COX-1. So you will have epigastric pain, you will have nausea and headache, a little bit of dizziness, rashes might occur. In some cases, ulceration and bleeding might occur. Less common, but it will happen. Ulceration and bleeding. About the PK of this drug, it is 99% protein bound. So be careful when giving diclofenac. It can get very, very strongly bound to proteins, and it will be harder to remove in case of toxicity. It has 99% protein bound, and it is very well absorbed orally. Oral drug there is the time. All right, it is metabolized and excreted by both bile and urine. All right. So that is about your diclofenac. Generally, the dose that you give is around 50 mg TDS. Okay, 3 times a day. So 50 mg TDS oral. Okay. Initially, you give TD, then followed by BD. So there's some concept of loading dose, right? Initially, you load the dose using 50 grams 3 times a day. Then later on, you'll follow up by 2 times a day. So you'll decrease the dose, overall daily dose to 100 mg. Okay, I hope you remember the concept of loading dose and maintenance dose. Initially, you want to spike the amount of drug in the person's blood. That is why you'll give a slightly higher concentration. Later on, for maintenance, you'll give a lower concentration. All right, you can do that for several drugs. Coming to the next drug, which is indomethacin. Indomethacin is a very good anti-inflammatory drug. Okay, a very potent anti-inflammatory drug. Potent anti-inflammatory drug. All right. Again, this iske uses भी will be included in your what you call OA, RA. उसमें use करते हैं mainly indomethacin को. Later on when you study about osteoarthritis and arthritis in general, you will have something called DMARDs. Okay, DMARDs is a class of what you call drugs that are given to treat arthritis. उन लोगों के अंदर one class will be anti-inflammatory, which includes indomethacin. Okay, this fellow is only used for tissue injury pain. Okay, and only for inflammatory pain. It will not work on other types of pain. Mostly, it will, because it tends to go more towards your tissues. It will only work on tissue injury. Okay, so it treats tissue injury pain, or it will only relieve inflammatory pain, not other types of pain. You can have other types of pain as well, rather than inflammatory pain, but this fellow can also only be useful in this type of pain. I'll just write this in a different color so that you don't get confused. Indomethacin. All right. Now, this drug is absorbed very well orally, and it is mainly metabolized by your liver and is excreted by your urine. But there are some significant side effects with indomethacin. It has a very high incidence of gastrointestinal and CNS side effects. Almost 50% of patients who take indomethacin will have some or the other gastric problem, or they will have a CNS problem. Okay, so AD में high incidence of almost 50%. Okay, high incidence is 50%, meaning out of 10 patients, 5 patients will have these what they call side effects or adverse effects. High incidence of GI and CNS effects, CNS side effects. Okay, these will specifically include gastric irritation, nausea, anorexia, gastric bleeding, diarrhea. The patient might have frontal headache. Frontal headache is very common. Okay, that is one CNS problem. Frontal headache occurs in patients who have taken indomethacin. Okay, frontal lobe में headache होता, frontal lobe में pain होता. So frontal headache is very common. Ataxia occurs. The patient will lose coordination of their muscles and their movement. Ataxia occurs. Hallucination might occur. Depression and psychosis will occur. So you have to be careful. Do not give this drug in any case when a patient is either a machinery worker, so contraindicated in heavy machinery workers. You do not want any person who deals with heavy machinery taking indomethacin. Okay, it can be very dangerous. Heavy machinery workers, patients with psychiatry background, so psychiatric patients, uh, patients with kidney disease, because it is metabolized by your liver and excreted by your kidneys. It is better to avoid in patients who do not have a normal functioning liver and a normal functioning kidney. If excretion of endomethacin does not occur, it will start getting accumulated in your body and lead to toxicity. That is why avoid it in kidney disease. In pregnant women, contraindicated. Okay, do not give it in pregnant women, almost teratogenic, and children. Okay, So these are some important points about your indomethacin. Your indole derivative में आता है ये indomethacin. Your diclofenac, if you remember yesterday I told you about several classes. Those are chemical classes, okay? Based on their structure, they were defined in different classes. Your diclofenac comes under aryl acetic acid derivatives. This comes under indole derivatives. The structure is different, okay? But mechanism of action will be same. They will what they call block COX, or they will inhibit COX. Okay, coming to selective COX-2 inhibitors, the primary drug that we'll be talking about is celecoxib. But before going into that, some important points about selective COX-2 inhibitors. These will not cause as much effect on your gastric system, okay? Because these are selectively inhibiting only COX-2, they will not have the side effects which happen when you block COX-1. Okay, if you remember, I told you yesterday or day before yesterday, I don't remember, COX-1 and COX-2 both play, COX-1 specifically plays a very important role in making sure that your stomach is lined with mucus and it has enough amount of bicarbonate being secreted so that acid production is in control. And COX-1 also causes the production of TXA2. It helps in the production of TXA2, thromboxane A2. Thromboxane A2 is important for clotting, meaning wherever I'm blocking COX-1, I will cause the patient to have gastric distress. That is why all NSAIDs, specifically traditional NSAIDs, those who are non-selective or those who are preferentially selective as well, they will have gastrointestinal side effects. All of them will have gastrointestinal side effects. Okay, this on the other hand will have almost none gastric vertical damage, because very little gastromucosal damage, and they do not depress TXA2 production by platelets at all. So your platelet you will not have a bleeding disorder. In the case of vertical traditional NSAIDs, whenever you were trying to, or whenever your drug blocked TXA2, clotting did not occur properly because platelets are not able to clump properly. TXA2 does that. It will help in platelet aggregation. If you remember wound formation, in that I told you that whenever injury occurs, immediately platelets, thrombocytes will rush to that area and they will form a clump like structure where they will literally form a physical plug where they will stop bleeding. Okay, fibrin will come, collagen will come, vertical thromboxane A2 comes, and platelet will be coming to that area and they get stuck, and they will form a kind of a plug in that area so that the injury gets blocked. So if I put it in a scenario like this, let's suppose there is a small cut on your hand or something like that. So there is a cut on your hand like this. Okay, what happens is it will get completely blocked. So imagine this purple thing is your platelets. They will completely block your injury. Okay, the bigger the injury, the more time it will take, but they will eventually block your vertical injury. If your injury is so big that your vertical platelets are not able to control them, then you obviously need to uh, put something external to stop the bleeding, because it will be harder to treat a patient who has lost a lot of blood. Always remember that whenever someone has an injury, especially a bleeding injury, the most important thing that you can do for the patient is stop their bleeding. Okay, forget about everything. Whenever you have a see, as a nurse as well, you need to be very objective. Instead of panicking when you see someone who has a major injury or something like that, even when you're not in a hospital, let's suppose you're vertical roaming around some road, or you're just going about your way and you see some accident or something like that, and the patient is profusely bleeding, they will not die because of the injury as such. So let's suppose they are having the vertical, because of whatever reason their hand broke and there was a complicated fracture and they are bleeding. Okay, uh, before going to the hospital, before they die because of the pain, they'll die because of blood loss. Okay, it is very hard to replace blood. Think of it this way: they have to go to the hospital, get in contact with the blood bank, get that blood donated, and all of those complications will happen. You know, you have been working in a hospital. So it is easier to simply block the flow of blood, especially if it is a big injury where the patient might bleed out. It is always beneficial that you have to block the bleeding first. See, patient zinda hai to you can treat them. Okay, if the patient is not alive, if you wait till then, there's no point in treating them. They'll be dead by the time you what do you call, treat them. Okay, so stopping bleeding is a very big very important thing. That is why NSAIDs can be dangerous, especially in cardiovascular injury patients. All right, patients with cardiovascular disorders, because they can what do you call, create problems. Coming back to COX-2 inhibitors, this fellow will specifically decrease PGI2 because it is specifically causing COX2 inhibition. It will cause the inhibition of prostacyclins, PGI2. If you remember, COX1 is causes the formation of PGE2 and what do you call TXA2. This fellow will cause COX2 will cause the production of prostacyclins. Prostacyclins are the ones that will cause local inflammation. Ideally, whenever I'm trying to give an NSAID, I would want to only stop local inflammation, not prostaglandins all over your body, because I told you prostaglandins are important for several functions. You do not want to inhibit prostaglandin function all over the body. You only want to inhibit prostacyclins which are present at the site of inflammation wherever there is injury, right? Selective COX-2 inhibitors do that. This can be used because of these advantages. They can be used in patients with high risk of PUD, perforation and bleeding. Okay, so that is one big advantage of selective COX-2 inhibitors. So can be used in patients with high risk of PUD, perforation and bleeding. Okay, erosions basically. So you can give them that. If selected, see, one thing is that whenever you give COX-2 inhibitors, don't give them a normal dose as such. Start with a lower dose over try to give the lowest dose for the shortest period of time, because they themselves have their own set of side effects which can be pretty vertical serious, in the sense that you have to completely avoid these selective COX-2 inhibitors in patients with heart disease, in patients with hypertension, in patients with cardiac failure or cerebrovascular disease, specifically stroke. Okay, because COX-2 will exert a prothrombotic influence, in the sense that they will cause platelet aggregation. If you inhibit COX-2, okay, it will cause a prothrombotic function. So in that case, you have to avoid it completely in patients with heart disease. It can lead to clotting disorders and all of that. All right. See, think of it this way. अगर एक reaction लिया मैं, arachidonic acid है, arachidonic acid को मैं COX-1 and COX-2 से, COX-1 and COX-2 है, ठीक है? यहाँ पर COX-1 के end पे you are getting PGE2, PGE1, E1 and E2 and TXA2. Second, and TXA2. TXA2 is responsible for clotting. Okay, COX-2 is responsible for the formation of PGI2. Okay. Normally, if you are trying to inhibit this fellow, it is fine. Okay, we are trying to inhibit only COX-2. If you give it in a patient, see, whenever I'm blocking this COX-2, think of it this way, because the reaction cannot go evenly. So if I have 10 molecules of arachidonic acid, 5 will undergo this, 5 will undergo this. Now, if I'm blocking COX-2, 10 will undergo this. Okay, so I will have increased production of PGE1 and PGE2 and increased production of TXA2. Normally, in a healthy person, it is fine. But in a person who has some cardiovascular disorders, increase in the amount of TXA2 will cause clotting, right? If there is more amount of TXA2 present, and the patient, see, whenever someone has a cardiovascular disorder, hypertension rendo, atherosclerosis rendo, they are predisposed to more thrombosis. They can easily form clots. Okay, in them, if you are increasing TXA2 level, more amount of clots will be formed, and they can go and block several arteries, and they can go and block blood vessels. That will create a new set of problems on its own. That is why it should be completely avoided in patients who have heart disease. All right, I hope you understood the concept here. See, feel free to ask me any doubts if you have, because well, technically I cannot read your mind, so you'll have to ask. Right. Now, as coming back to our this thing, selective COX-2 inhibitors, the primary drug that we'll be discussing in this is celecoxib. Celecoxib is the ideal selective COX-2 inhibitor. This fellow has almost 6 to 20 fold COX-2 selectivity. It has 6 to 20 fold. इसका मतलब ये है, it has 6 to 20 times more chances of blocking COX-2 than COX-1. Okay, even when we tell that a selectively COX-2 inhibitor, it will not purely influence only COX-2. थोड़ा बहुत COX-1 को affect होता, but we can push the reaction towards COX-2. Okay, that is what celecoxib does. It has 20 times more affinity to COX-2 than COX-1. So for every 20 molecules of COX-2, it will inhibit one molecule of COX-1 might get inhibited. So that's a very big difference. अगर 20 times ज़्यादा COX-2 को affect कर रहा हो, that is why they are categorized into selective COX-2 inhibitors. These fellows are almost as effective as this fellow is almost as effective as diclofenac in rheumatoid arthritis, but there are some side effects. They will cause dyspepsia. It can cause mild diarrhea. It will cause a slight rise in BP. Okay, so I'll just write the adverse effects. This fellow can cause dyspepsia, indigestion. It can cause mild diarrhea. Okay, you will have milder symptoms related to GIT, almost none. Small spike in blood pressure. See, in normal patient, it will cause a small spike in blood pressure. If you're giving it in a patient who has cardiovascular disorders, there'll be a big spike. Okay, it can cause edema, fluid retention की वजह से, and it will cause rashes. Alright. Coming to PK, this fellow is slowly absorbed. It is 90%, 97% plasma protein bound, and it is metabolized by your liver. Okay, primarily by your microsomal enzymes. It is a microsomal enzyme inducer. Okay, so keep that in mind. It is a microsomal enzyme inducer. This fellow is particularly used for osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. You generally give a dose of around 100 to 200 mg BD for OA and RA, osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis, right? So that is about your selective COX-2 inhibitors. We'll come to one last class, which is poor analgesics. If you remember, there was another last class which we discussed in NSAIDs yesterday, which had poor analgesic activity but very good antipyretic activity. The main drug that will come in that is paracetamol. All right. So, right, paracetamol or acetaminophen refers to the same thing. This fellow has very good what do you call effect as an antipyretic. Okay, it will decrease body temperature very well, but it is not as good of a painkiller as aspirin. So what you do is generally you will give a combination of aspirin and paracetamol. uh, it is generally found in market. Paracetamol and aspirin are given in combo for antipyretic. Antipyretics are any drugs that will decrease body temperature. Okay, antipyretic plus analgesic effect. Your aspirin has some antipyretic effect, but not as good as paracetamol. Paracetamol has some analgesic effect, but not as good as aspirin. That is why the combination is given. Okay. As such, paracetamol is a very safe drug as well. Okay, it has very minimal side effects. उतने ज़्यादा दिखते नहीं. बहुत तो you will have some nausea and sometimes in some patients rashes होते. Okay, you can give oral doses. It is very convenient, and you can give it once in 6 hours. Like three, generally it will last in your body for T half is around 2 to 3 hours. So you can give the doses every 6 to 7 hours. 3 times a day दिए तो भी चलता. Never exceed paracetamol dose over 3 grams. Okay. uh, do not exceed daily dose of 3 grams. Generally if you calculate 500 mg का भी दिए या 1 gram का भी डोलो, let's suppose 650 mg का डोलो दिए, या you take 500 mg of paracetamol, you give it not more than 2 or 3 times a day, that will barely come up to 2000, less than 2000 generally. In the case that you are exceeding 3000 mg or 3 grams, there will be acute paracetamol poisoning. Paracetamol has one very specific metabolite. Okay, it is called N-acetyl benzoquinonamine, NABQI बोलते हैं उसको. So paracetamol has a metabolite called NABQI, N-acetyl benzoquinonamine. One second. N-acetyl P benzoquinone imine. Okay, that is why it is called NABQI. This fellow is severely hepatotoxic. Okay, it can destroy your liver. It is severely hepatotoxic, and you might have to give something called N-acetylcysteine as an antidote. So the antidote is an acetyl cysteine. Okay, in case you are finding a patient who has what you call acute paracetamol poisoning. See, what happens is in acute paracetamol poisoning is there will be severe toxicity, and it may cause renal tubular necrosis, and it will cause hyperglycemia, it will cause coma, it will cause jaundice. Those are the symptoms. If someone is having someone has taken a very high dose of paracetamol, they will have jaundice, they will have liver damage की वजह से jaundice होता, they will have hypoglycemia, they will have what do you call hepatic necrosis, they will have renal tubular necrosis, and they will go into coma generally. At that point of time, administer the antidote N-acetylcysteine as soon as possible. Okay, that will reverse the effect of paracetamol. As such, it does not have a significant side effect, but in case you go over normal doses, that is when paracetamol toxicity occurs. Okay, so this is about NSAIDs. We'll get into sedatives and hypnotics now. So one class of this thing is done. Coming to the next class, which is sedatives and hypnotics. In this, you'll study about benzodiazepines and barbiturates. Okay, we'll go into a little more detail. Sedatives and hypnotics. Now, sedative is any drug that will see, the definition of sedative is anything that will calm the patient. Okay, it will produce calming and quietening effect and reduces excitement without inducing sleep. Okay, they might make the patient slightly drowsy, but it will not induce sleep. The patient will only become slightly drowsy. They might enter in a trance-like state. Hypnotic, on the other hand, will induce sleep. Okay, it will resemble natural sleep, but there'll be slight differences in their sleep. Okay, आप लोगों को कभी मैं स्लीप के बारे में पढ़ा था, what is sleep cycle and what are the phases of sleep and all, what is stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 REM sleep? No,
फर्स्ट ईयर
yes,
में पढ़ाया था सर एक बार
फर्स्ट ईयर में पढ़ाए थे, याद है?
थोड़ा सा
थोड़ा सा याद है, ठीक है. Go over it. You don't need to go into detail. Just Google what are the types of sleep and what are the phases of sleep. Okay. This sedative and hypnotic, the drugs are the same. Okay. It is just that the dose will slightly change. Sometimes a different type of drug is given, but they come under the same class. The way they work will be the same. But depending on, see, there are a few drugs I told you long ago. There will be a few drugs which can be used in several classes. Okay, यहाँ पर sedatives and hypnotics में you will get one standard drug that you will see is diazepam, but you have seen the use of diazepam as analgesic, you have seen the use of diazepam in anesthesia, you have seen the use of diazepam in epilepsy, right? You can have several uses of the same drug depending on the variance in dosages, थोड़ा थोड़ा effect change होता. Okay, you will also see diazepam sometimes being used as an antipsychotic. Okay, उसमें भी use करते हैं, तो वैसा change होता. All right, now hypnosis or hypnotic drug is the same drug. It will be like sedative, but it is a stronger drug. Okay, sometimes is a higher dose, or it is a variant of the same class which is stronger in its action. Hypnotics are drugs that will cause sleep. They will induce a type of artificial sleep. It will look like natural sleep, but it will not be natural sleep. Sedatives do not cause sleep. They will only calm the patient down. Okay, if for example, if someone goes to uh, perform a surgery, that is why pre-anesthetic में sedative देते. Okay, you do not want the patient extremely excited, because excitation will cause autonomic responses in your body. You do not want that during surgery. Autonomic responses will include what you call gastric secretions to be increased, respiration to change, all of that. So that is why sedatives are given. यहाँ पर sleep will not be induced, only the patient will become calmer. All right, coming to the classification of sedatives and hypnotics. Classification, yeah. So the first class will be benzodiazepines. आप लोगों को गाबा क्या है याद है? व्हाट इज गाबा? अपन एपिलेप्सी में पढ़े थे, व्हाट इज गाबा? Who is GABA? Anyone?
Sir, chlorine receptors.
Close. What does it do to chlorine receptor? अच्छा, what is GABA? क्या है GABA? हार्मोन है, एंजाइम है, क्या है? कुछ है ना वो? You're correct. It works on chlorine receptors. Yes, technically, GABA will work on GABAergic receptors, which will open the gates for chlorine. But yeah, you're close, very close actually. What is GABA? क्या हुआ रे? जो पढ़ा रहे हवा में उड़ जा रहा, तुम लोग नहीं पढ़े तो याद नहीं रहता, ये मुश्किल फिर. You have to immediately remember what you call read and try to recollect as much as possible, because pharmacology will be very 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 confusing if you keep it for the last moment. Okay? And the way things are looking, you might have an exam, so start preparing. See, the thing with pharmacology is because it involves so heavily on your memory, it is not something that you can memorize in one day or one night. Do not by any chance make the mistake of thinking that you can do one day batting and pass pharmacology. It will be hell. Okay, especially because there are so many classes, so many drugs in each class has several subclasses. अगर एक क्लास में ही confusion हो गया, if you shift one drug from the other, that itself will make a huge difference. Okay, so do not do one day batting for pharmacology. For that matter, don't do one day batting for any subject. Okay,
Neurotransmitter.
yeah, it is a neurotransmitter. Okay, what does it do? Chlorine अंदर जाता. Okay, because chlorine is going inside, what will happen? इतना टाइम लगा रहे गूगल करने के लिए? You forget that I was a student as well.
Neuron excitability.
न्यूरॉन एक्साइटेबिलिटी क्या होता है? न्यूरॉन एक्साइटेबिलिटी को see, whenever I have GABA, if you remember in epilepsy, I told you that there is overexcitation of your neurons, right? In the overexcitation of neuron literally translates to neurons firing continuously without any break, right? That is when epilepsy occurs. That is when a person has a seizure. GABA is a neurotransmitter that is secreted by an interneuron present near the synovial cleft. Okay, if I have two different neurons and उन लोगों के बीच में synapse है, sorry, not synovial cleft, synaptic cleft. So उन दोनों के बीच में synapse है. वहां पर आपके नॉर्मल ट्रांसमिटर्स, स्पेसिफिकली ग्लूटामेट इज द एक्साइटेटरी मेन एक्साइटेटरी न्यूरोट्रांसमिटर, दैट फेलो इज कॉजिंग एक्साइटेशन ऑफ द पोस्ट सिनेप्टिक न्यूरॉन. अगर मेरे को कंटिन्यूअस एक्साइटेशन को रोकना है, what my body does is it will start secreting GABA from an interneuron. Interneuron are neurons that are present near your main neurons, and in लोगों का function क्या है? They will intermediate function in the sense that for example I'll simply draw it and show you. Okay, one second. So ये एक neuron है, let's suppose, and this is the dendrite of the other neuron. Okay, postsynaptic, presynaptic. यहाँ से ट्रांसमिशन जा रहा, इधर एक न्यूरोट्रांसमीटर को एक्साइट करता, लेट्स सपोज यहाँ पर ग्लूटामेट है. ओके, दिस फेलो विल अंडरगो एक्सोसाइटोसिस, कम आउट, यहाँ पर आके रिसेप्टर को बाइंड होता, इट विल रिले द इंफॉर्मेशन. यहाँ पर थ्रेशोल्ड पोटेंशियल इज क्रिएटेड. थ्रेशोल्ड पोटेंशियल इज नॉट एक्शन पोटेंशियल. ओके, read your physiology once to if you are getting confused what is threshold and action potential. Axon hillock के पास आके threshold potential, if it reaches enough amount of threshold, literally is minus 55 millivolts हुआ. If you remember, action potential is all or none. Until and unless you have minus 55 millivolts, you will not have a reaction. ठीक है, as soon as minus 55 millivolts होता है, you will have an action potential. This will keep on continuing from one chamber of your one node of Ranvier to the other node of Ranvier. Literally saltatory motion of your action potential occurs. Your electricity will jump. Okay, that is how action potential occurs. Now if I don't have anything stopping one, यहाँ पर ये एक one potential है which is transferring into one potential here, right? If I have continuous transmission of impulses, you will get fried. Okay, that is why you will have something called an interneuron present near the synaptic cleft. It will be a little closer. I couldn't draw it here. That is why I'm drawing here. This fellow will be present here. Okay, somewhat here. This fellow will cause what do you call release of GABA. It will sense that it is your neurons are getting firing again and again, and it will release GABA. Okay, let me use a different color. You'll get confused later. So let us say GABA is red. Okay, या GABA रहता. GABA क्या करता? GABA आके ये न्यूरॉन के GABAergic receptor को attach होता. Alright. This GABAergic receptor, when attached to it, will open a gate of chlorine. Now, if I want action potential, I told you I need a potential of minus 55 millivolts. If you remember long ago, I told you that to achieve minus 55 millivolts, your resting potential is minus 70. Okay, on an average in a neuron. वहां से अगर मेरे को minus 55 को आना है तो I have to induce positive potential. That is achieved by sending calcium and sodium inside. ठीक है, making the charge more positive. This is still negative, but it is relatively more positive. Minus 55 is more positive than minus 70. ठीक है, it is going towards zero. That is why it is more positive. ठीक है, zero के ऊपर रहा तो positive हो जाता. So in that sense, minus 70 is more negative. By inducing chlorine, I will make this charge again more negative. So minus 55 से अगर minus 60 भी हो गया, I will not have any action potential. Inhibition of action potential occurs. That is how these fellows work. Okay. So I hope that refreshed your memory a little bit. Oh dear. So ठीक है, we'll continue with in the next class. For now, you have these in benzodiazepines. You have three main classes. One is long acting, which will act for almost 1 to 2 days. Those include diazepam, clonazepam, and chlordiazepoxide. Chlordiazepoxide is a very ancient benzodiazepine, even used here, but that was one of the first benzodiazepines that was made. Okay, it was made in 1961. Then you have shorter acting, which include what you call oxazepam and lorazepam. They will only work for half a day to 1 day. Then you have ultra short acting, which will work less than 6 hours, which will be your midazolam and triazolam. We'll go over them individually in the next class. Okay, so I'll just take your attention.